and they would fire double balls with chains, things that would go out, grab the ribbing, rip it apart. Oh, I can see, ladies and gentlemen, that we're starting to have some action here. From the side gate, it looks like there seems to be some sort of attack going on, and you can see the French soldiers now are forming up, and I see a group of the British are actually through the gates now, ladies and gentlemen, are forming up now. You will see that the French will try to put together as quickly as possible their lines so that they can meet this assault head on. And there's, of course, the commander indicating exactly where everybody has to be and where they're going to be. Discipline was critical to all of these battles, ladies and gentlemen. Drilling relentlessly so you understood where you had to be. And when you got the order, you took that position. Oh my goodness, I see an awful lot of redcoats coming through the gates there. So it looks like we have about equal forces on each side at this moment.
Now, it's interesting to note with the mention of training. Training during the Napoleonic era is very different from a modern soldier. Modern soldiers, of course, are taught initiative. They're expected to be a bit more clever and think on their own on the battlefield while still obeying orders. But during the Napoleonic eras, you didn't want that. The men were like clockworks. They had to all work together in sync. Your independent opinion didn't matter. You were part of the big machine, and you had to move with everybody else. If you failed and you weren't working well, you would be ripped to pieces out on the field by your enemy.
And as I mentioned earlier, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important that when you're doing musket fire, they give the order you all fire at the same time. That way you're really filling the air filled with lead. And, of course, your opponent are lined up just as you are, in a line facing you. The idea is to try and take possession of the field and slowly move that enemy or opponent to wherever you want them to be. You may see the French line dropping back to accommodate the aggressiveness of the British troops. But the British were famous for trying to get as close as possible, and then after a volley, fixing their bayonets and charging. And they did so very successfully at the Battle of Queenston Heights, which sort of wrapped things up nicely when they charged the American lines with bayonet. And it would be a pretty awesome sight to see men running at full speed with a bayonet on the end of their musket aiming at you. So that was some situation you didn't want to get into. Now you see the British lines moving forward. And that's the discipline, ladies and gentlemen. There they are under fire, and those men are calmly marching forward. You notice that the sergeants, of course, are the ones at the end with the large pikes. Certainly pikes are deadly in battle when you get close enough. But prior to that, those pikes are also very handy for keeping your line dressed in terms of keeping the men in a straight line, and also being as, shall we say, some sort of obstacle should they wish to go the other way when you don't want them to.
I believe they refer to them as encouragement sticks, colloquially.
Yeah, that's right. And very encouraging indeed. Okay, you can see the French now are getting off yet another volley. Notice how they have fallen back a little bit, but they do so in good order. We're making sure that their flanks certainly are covered by, we have some pickets out on this side nearest to us, but the line, though, has dropped back, considering that dropped back about 30 feet or so. We'll see if the British follow this through with some sort of forward motion to take advantage of the new positions, and they certainly do. There they are, marching right into the fray, ladies and gentlemen. They've taken a longer position. Now watch for the British volley. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, one of the things of note in this era is the fact that the French and the British armies were oftentimes made up of many foreign contingents fighting amongst them. The French had conquered many nations across Central Europe and had absorbed their militaries into the ranks, and the British had made a lot of recruitment amongst men who wished to fight against the French. It's interesting to note that the British Army in 1812, 40% of their men did not come from the British Isles.
Now you notice, ladies and gentlemen, that there's another small group of French soldiers, of course, who are lining up beside the building right in the middle here. And it looks like they are anticipating an attack coming from that particular direction. There is a gate at the back, and no, it looks like there's a small sortie of British that have come around the corner and have tried to take that flank. They've laid down a volley, and now they're attempting to protect that part of the battlefield. And the British are almost to the point now where the French were at the start of this battle. They have pushed them right back into the open square here. And here come the British again, marching forward. The French are desperately trying to get their line of battle drawn up here. The commander's obviously seeing something I'm not seeing because they have just swung them into position, all right? And now the second half of the British line's moved.
Oh, yes, we're dying now.
The British volley, my goodness. It's like one loud noise when it happens. I see what's happening now. In the distance there, it looks like we have some of the 95th riflemen are up there on the berm, ladies and gentlemen. They're firing down at the, it looks like the French have been flanked. They're getting fired now from two different directions. One thing you do not want to be in is when you're being fired at from the side while you're trying to stave off the enemy in front of you who's firing at you, and they have got themselves in a real pickle here, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, the French have to be particularly careful with 95th rifles. As Scott mentioned earlier, the rifles were incredibly accurate, with the longest confirmed kill with a Baker rifle during the Napoleonic Wars being 420 yards. Of particular target were going to be officers, sergeants, basically anybody who looked like they knew what they were doing. The 95th rifles were going to try to put them down as quickly as possible.
Okay, now, look at my goodness. The British are really moving in on this right now. The French have a number of their men down. The British are actually doing quite well in terms of their casualties. They are certainly holding their own. And of course, in the background, we can hear the drums and we can hear the pipes being played. A common instrument, much like the fife and drums, that can be heard over a long distance. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. They are really pushed into a pocket here now. Not only are they being shot at from the side, but also from the top of a hill, which is very, very difficult to deal with. You notice, of course, the rifle's all dressed in green. So if you're laying in the tall grass like they are right now, you tend to disappear until you pop up and start to fire. And look at that British line. It is still moving forward.
Now, there was a Canadian regiment that wore a uniform very similar to the 95th. They were called the Glengarry Light Infantry. Their nickname from the local Iroquois for their camouflage capabilities was the Black Stumps, because at a distance you could only see the top of their shakos poking out from the brush.
Well, as we were just talking there a moment ago, Daryl, the entire line fired a volley, and that has got to be decimating to the French troops that are at this side. And we can see the general now making decisions, and they're sending off messengers. It looks like they're holding on to their own quite well here, but it's going to be very tough for the French to come back from this one.
Now, of note is we often get this impression of officers being these haughty, fancy types that go and hide behind the lines. Being an officer this time period meant exposing yourself to danger, and it was oftentimes almost suicidal for officers. The Battle of Chippewa, there was a British regiment that lost 16 of its 18 officers killed or wounded in 20 minutes of engaging the enemy.
Absolutely. You would see those people, of course, the soldiers on the other side would be taking careful aim at the junior officers, particularly the commanding the lines, because once you took out the officers, you took out the command, and that was very important. But right now, if you notice, the British officers, even though they have been certainly present throughout this battle, they are still in command of their troops. The French have lost a number of men now, and you can see that line has really, really shrunk, and they are under really withering fire too, as far as that goes.
Well, the French are in a desperate position after 2 engagements with the British and being picked up in a fortified position.
Ooh, another major volley. Wow.
Their numbers have already been bled nearly white, and now Now it just seems that the numbers are really telling against them.
Unless there's some sort of tactical miracle they're thinking of. No, there's a white flag. The handkerchief has gone up on the French side. The French are surrendering, it appears.
Or at least wishing to treat with their enemy.
Perhaps I was running a little too fast, yes. The commanders have come out. It is indeed a surrender. The French commander is handing over his sword to the British commander. And now he's giving it back to the commander, which is a sign, a very chivalrous sign on behalf of that commander to give back the sword, recognizing, of course, the bravery of not only the commander, but of all the men that were present here. And now at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we were going to have the lament paid for all the men, of course, that were shot at this time. So you will see the troops will remove their hats and the piper will come forward to play the lament. We would ask you to, in reverence, recognize this.
Especially those riflemen up on the hill. They got Columbus? Yeah.
Lucy. Lucy.
Who's the guy with the top hat? I'm not sure. Probably a French diplomat. Doctor? Coroner?
Good.
Butcher?
With the butt? Did you see the one French guy?
Yeah, it's your.
Roll down the hill? Yeah. That guy?
Yeah, right?
Got shot. You went like...
Yeah.
cannon. Remember in Vineland, they did that like year festival. And they used to have a cannon they fired off into the ground.
Little tiny guy.
In my backpack I have
Carrots.
he's going the wrong way.
Carrots.
Pop-Tarts?
Anna, let me stop.
I guess you're throwing good one. I got shot feature. That's good.
That does.
It's too far away.